Hello, my name is Nicole Hagerberg Ziegler, and I am excited to bring to you my interpersonal communication project for my Human Service Counseling Class 508 at Liberty University under the teaching of Dr. Alan Cheney. Next slide. Throughout this presentation, I will be speaking on various topics such as the introduction, overarching goals, enlarging the conversation, positive and negative effects of behavioral blends, potential barriers to communication, solutions to noise pollution, both internally and externally, and last but not least, the action plan. Next slide. Introduction. All components of communication are important. However, listening is used the most. According to Burley Allen, approximately 40% of our communication is done by listening. Yet, listening is the most overlooked form of communication. Listening plays a major role in the interpersonal communication process. According to Stewart, interpersonal communication happens when people who are involved talk and listen to one another in a way that maximizes the presence of the personal. In this presentation, we will go on a journey to explore interpersonal communication as it relates to me. We will also discuss the factors that can enhance or disturb the communication process. Next slide. Overarching goals. Now, I have to be honest, when writing my overarching goals, this was not an easy task because I was trying my hardest to keep it concise. However, my overarching goals for my life is to communicate effectively, listen attentively and empathetically, along with create an environment where the individual that I'm conversing with feels comfortable to speak with me without any judgment. The Bible tells us in Romans 8:1, therefore now there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And when I communicate with anyone, my goal and desire is to create an environment where they can communicate with me without any condemnation, guilt, or shame. Next slide. Enlarging the conversation. Stewart defines communicating as the continuous, complex, collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making. Now, before taking this course, I never even heard of enlarging the conversation. However, it's very important to me now that I know what it is. In order to enlarge the conversation, the exchange of words must be continuous. So this even includes if you're in a confrontation or an argument with someone. It may not be the communication that you desire. However, both parties are still collaborating to keep the conversation going. Stewart tells us when things are getting sour and the conversation is in danger of ending, each communicator has the opportunity to change how things are going at any time. Next slide. When speaking on enlarging the conversation, I wanted to touch on the 6 features of communication. We know that listening is the key factor in keeping the conversation going. However, how we listen is affected by the 6 features of communication. Stewart tells us the 6 features of communication are meaning, choice, culture, identities, conversation, and nexting. Next slide. Nexting, according to Stewart, is the most important single communication skill. Nexting is responding with substance to what just happened, taking the additional step in the communication process. So you see, it's impossible to complete the skill of nexting without listening. Next slide. Before we get too far into the presentation, I want to share a little bit about me, my background. I am the second oldest girl of 6 children in a blended family. I am a survivor of sexual assault, which has a lot to do with my personality, in the way that I communicate with people, and then also my listening habits. I've been married for 3 years. I'm a cheerleading coach, and I have been a cheerleading coach for 10 years. I am the owner and founder of a nonprofit organization called A Delicate Rose Incorporated, where our focus is to combat sexual assault. I've been an actress for over 16 years. I'm also in the ministry, and we will be launching our own ministry very soon. My goal is to become an effective life coach. Next slide. Carbonell talks about the 4 temperament models of human behavior. Now, I was in shock when I took the assessment that was required for the course. I was pleasantly shocked that I've never been able to put myself into words like this book did. And I really appreciate it because I learned so much about myself doing the assessment. Now talking about my behavioral blend. My behavioral blend is CSD. And knowing my behavioral blend allows me to have more enhanced and fulfilling relationships with others. Because I know more about myself now, and I also know what others are expecting of me, which can help me to understand their behaviors towards me as well. Carbonell details behavioral blends into graphs. Graph 1 is what is expected of me. Graph 2 is what is me. Next slide. What is expected of me versus what is me? What is expected of me? People expect me to be direct, submissive, and competent. I agree with this, and I even find myself saying I'm very direct. I do feel that people want me to say exactly what it is in some cases, but in other cases, this may not be the best practice, and this is an area where I can use some balance. What is me? I can be very dominant. I tend to be the one who speaks what I want, not what the crowd wants. And I like to go out and make things happen. Now, there are positive and negative to my personality traits, of course, like anyone's. The positive is that I get things done. Also, people tend to trust me when I speak because of my authenticity. The negative is I can be so direct that it can become offensive. So again, it is for me to work on balance. Next slide. Potential barriers that I may face that Burley Allen highlighted are hearing what I want to hear. Sometimes, depending on the conversation, I am guilty of these things. Not hearing what is actually being said. Biased listening. If I have my mind made up about something, it's kind of hard for me to hear the person that is speaking and hear their side of it because I deem what they say as unimportant because I feel like I have the right answer, which is not fair. Green flag words, key words that interrupt our listening. Someone may say something and I get lost. I go in a daze based on what they said and I don't continue to follow the conversation, which means I'm not effectively listening to them. Interrupting the talker. This is one of my biggest barriers for myself. Oftentimes when someone's talking, it's not that I do it to be disrespectful. However, sometimes I'm so excited to share what I have to share, or I'm in fear of forgetting that I interrupt the talker. So this is definitely an area I have to work on. Physical barriers such as fatigue and hunger. I'm the worst person to talk to when I am tired. And it is important for anyone to just make sure if you're in a counseling session with someone, make sure you have adequate rest because it can seem disrespectful if you're falling asleep while they're talking. You can make that person feel unimportant. Next slide. Dealing with the barriers, very simple things that I can do over time. Although they sound simple, I know they won't be as simple to implement. However, hearing what I want to hear, I can ask clarifying questions to make sure I am hearing what they meant for me to hear and receive. Biased listening. I can be intentional about clearing my mind from any preconceived notions or judgments. Green flag words. Take a moment to explore the words or the thoughts that they gave out. Maybe talk to them about where I stopped in my mind with the conversation. Interrupting the talker. Be slow to speak. Following what the word of God tells me right there. Be slow to speak and, quick to listen. And the physical barriers, of course, make sure I'm eating, getting plenty of rest, things of that nature. Next slide. Internal noise solution. Now, some internal noises that I see myself facing is lack of focusing or paying attention. And then again, hearing what I want to hear. If for lack of focus, the solution would be to intentionally bring myself back from drifting off. I know that's probably going to take a while to execute and get perfect, but practice makes perfect. And then here are what I want to hear. Again, repeat for clarification and also controlling my emotions. Oftentimes we hear what we want to hear based on the emotion that's feeding our thoughts and taking over our minds at the moment. And sometimes you have to clear your mind completely of all of extra emotions. Next slide. External noise. Now, external noises sometimes you can't do anything about, but other times you can. External noises such as time pressure and deadlines. This class has been a key teacher for me of what to do with time pressure and deadlines, because I had so many deadlines to meet, but my schedule was overwhelmed. And I noticed when I stopped using my planner, things began to get chaotic. So effective time management is a solution to external noise. Also, work pressure, taking on more than you can handle or doing 2 or 3 things at one time. Now, I am the master at multitasking. However, here lately, I've been asked to do a lot of things outside of my normal scope of expertise, if you will. And I actually had to tell someone recently, I cannot do it. So I started creating boundaries and just learning to say no and being okay with saying no. Next slide. Last but not least, my action plan. Now, my action plan, I will say it will be a lot more detailed than this, but for the sake of time, my action plan is to listen with the intent to understand. I don't want to feel rude. One thing I learned in this class, I felt like I was a great communicator, and I do believe that I still am a good communicator, but I found that I can be very rude, and this class was really a eye-opener for me. The next thing I could do is examine my emotion, explore why I became upset, or maybe why something overwhelmed me immediately. I'll find out what it was that caused me to get upset, and maybe I can correct the source of it. The next one is practice listening without the intent of just thinking what I want to say next, which is a bad habit of mine. But again, actually listen to hear what the other person is trying to say to me. And also listen with patience. Sometimes when people don't get to the point, I get irritated and I just start talking. Listen with an open mind. This will combat being biased when someone's talking to me if I listen with an open mind. And then also, last but not least, listen with the love of Christ and be just non-judgmental. Oftentimes people may come to me and they may want to converse with me about something that I absolutely don't agree with. However, that does not mean that I can't learn from that person who I'm conversing with. So it's always good to take the time and just remember the things that Christ does for us. He's always there for us, and he's always there to listen, even when he doesn't agree. That doesn't mean we have to. That doesn't mean he goes along with what we want or what we're saying, but at least he's always there to listen. All right, and so thank you for watching my presentation. The next slide that I have is my references, and I pray that you have a blessed evening. Bye-bye.